This starts like a quiet Petroff and ends with mate on h6. Caruana builds it the grown-up way. Activity first, fixed pawn hook second, and only then the final tactical punch. White accepts the Petroff challenge immediately. Taking on e5 is not a cheap pawn grab. It is the start of a line where White is happy to trade a neat structure for active play. Here is the first real lesson. White takes doubled c-pawns on purpose because the center opens, the bishop pair survives, and Black loses the easy symmetry Petroff players usually want. This pawn move tells you what White expects later. f4 supports f5, supports g4, and makes long castling a very natural home for the king. Now the commitment is real. Once White castles long, every kingside pawn push comes with direct attacking intent. This pawn is not trying to win by itself. It steals e6 and g6, squeezes the dark squares, and makes the king's shelter narrower. Look at the coordination. Queen on f3, bishop on d3, pawns ready to roll. Caruana is not rushing tactics. He is placing every attacker on the right file and diagonal first. This is a clean attacking lesson. Gain space, create a hook, and make the defender choose which pawn chain will become the weakness later. Now the wedge is in. White is telling Black that if the kingside opens, it will open on White's terms. Black has stopped h6 for the moment, but the structure is fixed. Those pawns on g5 and f6 are hooks, so White can switch to the center without forgetting the king. And that switch comes immediately. When the flank is fixed, hit the center. Opening d5 forces Black's defenders to multitask instead of just watching the kingside. Black chooses activity on the wrong wing. The rook looks busy, but this was the moment to stay close to the king, not go pawn hunting. Another way Black could have played this position was a calmer defensive line. Let's step into that variation for a few moves, then we'll come back to the real game. This rook capture is a sturdier defense. The queen stays near the king and White no longer gets the instant mating net from the game. White still has the jump to f6 because the attack itself is real even in the better defense. But this is the key difference. The queen can recapture on f6, so the e8 check is no longer a knockout blow. White remains the side pressing, yet now the queens can come off and Black makes White keep working. Back to the real game. Black took the c-pawn instead, and that small change leaves the king with no clean bodyguard. The queen grab looks natural, but it abandons the key defensive job. After this, the jump to f6 hits with full force. That is why the c-pawn was poisoned. The knight crashes into f6, drags a defender onto the wrong square, and clears the queen's road to e8. Once the queen lands on e8, the finish is easy to follow. Check, king to g7. Then the h-pawn lands the last blow. Every earlier idea had a job. The f-pawns took space, the h-pawn wedge fixed the hook, the central break tore open the defenders, and h6 is the payoff. That is how a top player turns pressure into mate.